No one in my family would have understood what you meant if you asked them anything about why women couldn't succeed. They would simply not have understood you. The family all featured education. They were assessed on what they could do. They were then educated in it. They did it professionally, and their gender was entirely without relevance. So I grew up in that embedded culture. I went to grammar school, and I was quite keen to leave school, so I wouldn't go back for that third year sixth, which traditionally in those days did the Oxbridge entrance. So I left at the end of the sixth form and went to Sheffield without a gap year. Wasn't in vogue in those days, so one just went. So I had a state education in an academic hothouse. It was difficult to get into on the then 11 plus. Just imagine those days, the school simply said, we'll be taking the top 5% of the borough's passes if they are girls. And therefore one was pushed and pushed, and it stood me in good stead when I got to Sheffield, where I was already used to being examined rigorously. So the translation into the slightly wider approach of a university, which left you to look after yourself, didn't bother me as much as it did some others. I was taken to meet Rose Heilbronn when I was trying to work out what to do and where to go at the bar. And she was very helpful in simply being herself. So I saw a powerful woman who'd achieved, who was groomed, beautiful, confident, warm, welcoming, and who had understood the knocks along the way. So I then got pupillage by way of help from Gray's Inn. As it happens, the set to which I was sent did exclusively crime, and I got on all right there, and they offered me a tenancy. So I said, most grateful, thank you very much, and stayed. So I was a junior until 1990, when I applied for and got silk, by which time it was, at which time rather, it was unusual for a woman to be in silk. I was the only woman in my year. I did 10 years in silk, in crime, and that was hard going. It really was hard going for a variety of reasons. One of which was I was young going into silk, 39, and I knew perfectly well that whenever I made an appearance, there would be quite a few people watching, thinking, well, let's just see what's so special about her then, shall we? I'm temperamentally not a combatant, so I would deal with any pressure like that with a touch of humour, or by just gliding along, or waiting it out. And at the foundation of it all is I either can or I can't hack the job. So they either did or they didn't respect me at the end of it, and there was nothing I could do except try very hard. Having been the first woman chairman of the Criminal Bar Association was the inevitable blessing and curse. It was a blessing because people noticed. It was a curse because, yet again, one was obliged to demonstrate why one was worthy of it. That was a big step up for me. And one's got to be honest about it. It got me known in a way that from a less than first-rank set of chambers I otherwise might not have been. And it started to show me what I learned increasingly as I went along, which is that the profession will encourage open thinking. For example, what is now in statute allowing youngsters and vulnerable witnesses to give their evidence out of a courtroom setting was my idea. I had 4 daughters in 1980, 1981, 1983 and 1985. The second one, as a pure fluke, had Down syndrome, and she dropped dead when I was carrying the third. So in that little sentence, you learn quite a lot. And I learned a lot about this profession. The profession was very kind to me and very understanding when I had to deal with a double dose of grief, handicapped child and then a dead child. And it understood. It understood that I just needed to get on with things. So I've always treasured from that moment the particular collegiality of the law. And nobody survives if they tell me that it's anything other than the most marvellous profession. So as the 3 girls grew, there was the inevitable juggling of home life, their school life, my professional commitments. And remember, the ones who survived are born in 80, 83, 85. They were growing up at a time when things were very different. If I had a few weeks off with each of them when they were born, I paid my chamber's rent throughout. It would never have occurred to me to ask a judge to rise early so I could go to the nativity play. And one of the consequences was that I took quite a few financial knocks because they had to know that they mattered. So to be absolutely sure I could be at speech day, absolutely sure I could watch one of them, waving a leaf at Potiphar in the school play. I had not to take the case that might have compromised it, and that's what I had to do and did. But I had strands of spaghetti in my head a lot of the time, and it was muddled. I was trying to concentrate on the case, trying to think about the consultation I would have in another case at the end of the day, wondering if the tube would get me to parents' evening, hoping that nobody was ill so I wouldn't get a phone call saying, could you just? Married to another member of the bar who himself had a prestigious practice. He couldn't be turned to drop anything and go. He was otherwise engaged, as was I. So I understand the noun pressure. Trust me, I do. My husband's attitude to fatherhood of growing girls was that their mother did a cracking job. Whether I kept up with him, I'm not sure, but I was certainly there alongside him on the big days. We took silk on the same day. And in fact, we both became judges in the same year, separated by a couple of months. So, leaving aside how one describes it, whether I kept up or not, I was there. This is the 2 of us the day we were made QCs. Note the Victorian pose of the husband standing at the wife's shoulder as she sits there. We have a very similar photograph of our wedding. But I like that. Look at the happiness on those 2 faces. And look, even then, at the untidy hair of Miss Rafferty. Little has changed. I've been remarkably lucky. Several times I've been in the right place at the right time. One of the greatest honours I've had is to be made Chancellor of my own university. So I'm coming particularly from a family of educators, littered with head teachers. It was a triple privilege for me to be invited to become Chancellor of the University of Sheffield. So that's something I treasure, and it's a real highlight. And the other real consolation in the dark days that we always have, we all do, is that I've enjoyed the privilege of being a High Court judge and a Court of Appeal judge. They're extremely hard work, they really are. But I do wake up thinking, what an honour, what an honour. And one of the things it's done is allow me extra honours like this. And it allows me, insofar as anybody listens to me, to say to young professional women starting now, you do not have to be perfect. You really, really don't. You've got what you've got the brain you've got the background with which you were visited, you've got the looks that you are given. All you can do is capitalise on them. I mean, there's a lot to be said for remembering Ogden Nash. The art of life lies not in holding the best cards, but in playing superbly the hand you've been dealt.